The truth is, baby sleep is not as mysterious as you think. So let's get to it and figure out all the reasons why baby's not sleeping. And I want to give you a hint, there aren't that many reasons, so that's good for you. Hi, I'm Rachel from A Mother Far From Home. I'm a certified baby and toddler sleep consultant, language of listening parent coach, mother of five, and I am happy to be here, and I want to dive straight in. You know, it drives me nuts when people are like, we're going to talk about this, and you have to go to like minute 7 before this. No, we're not doing that. These are the most common questions I get. These are the ones that seem to come on repeat, that moms seem to have the most struggles with. These are not in any order. Why do babies wake early in the morning? There's quite a lot of answers to this, so what I'm gonna do in this video is just stream of consciousness. I'm just gonna talk. There's a few reasons. Okay, some of them is they've had enough sleep already. So if they go to bed really, you know, you put them to bed at 6 p.m. and then at 5:30 in the morning they wake up, it's because they had a lot of sleep at night. That's one reason. Another reason they wake up early is because they're overtired. So this is actually, people don't really believe this. It seems weird, but the more tired a baby is, the more likely they are to wake up early in the morning. And the more well rested they are, the more they'll kind of sleep past that 5 a.m. period on up until 6:37. If they're overtired, they might wake up early. So the way you manage this is making sure that your sleep routine and your sleep schedule throughout the day, they don't become overtired. And another way is you make sure you don't have unrealistic expectations. If they've already been in bed 11.5 hours at night, they're waking up because they're done with sleep. Another reason is because of light. So any kind of light, like if you don't have blackout curtains, then of course you need to get blackout curtains. Some babies will even wake up because the light under the door comes. You know, they roll over and they see a light and they're like, oh yeah, starting the day. So you definitely gotta have it be pitch black if you don't want them to wake up that early. Question number 2, can you be a gentle mama, an attachment mama, and quote, sleep train? Yes, because sleep training, again, I put this in quotes because it has such a bad rap, but it's basically just teaching babies how to sleep, helping them learn to sleep, teaching them and fostering healthy sleep habits. So literally every mother on the planet should be doing this. It doesn't matter if you're more mainstream or more attachment. Now the real question I feel like people are really saying here is, because I don't want to do cry it out, can I still sleep train? And the answer to that is also yes. There are spectrums of methods. I talk about this a lot. I have a sleep class, a baby sleep class called Sleep Little Lamb. And it actually helps you go through and choose your settling method based on your personality, okay? So I'm gonna say that. The link is in the description on that. But you can choose a settling method that you're comfortable with. You can choose a settling method that doesn't involve cry it out. Now, if you've gone months and months or years of doing a certain thing and you change it, your child's gonna cry. They're going to protest this change. There's going to be protest tears. But that's not the same thing. Oh, this wasn't a question, but I like to add this. A baby crying because you're not doing what you always did because you're trying to make more healthy habits, them crying because of that is not cry it out. Cry it out is actually a specific, purposeful strategy. Question number 3, what do I do when baby wakes up from a nap after 30 minutes? This is a great question because 30 minutes isn't even really a full sleep cycle. So some babies, especially newborns, will do like a 45-minute sleep and then they won't want to, this cat napping, they won't want to break through and connect that sleep cycle from active to passive and have a full nap. But once they're past that newborn phase, if they're waking up after 30 or 45 minutes, they don't know how to sleep on their own, or they have a job to do, aka making sure they're in the same spot they were when you put them to bed. This is why tricking them, getting them to sleep one way, putting them somewhere else, you think you're like helping them, but actually this is distressing for them because then they're like, wait a minute, I was just in mommy's beloved arms and now I'm in some dark room that I hate. And then mom's like, see? No, it's because you tricked them, okay? Like, this is normal. We all want to do this, but it doesn't help because then they wake up with the job to do, which is make sure everything's the same. It's not. They're done with their nap. What you would do is, as long as you know they're not hungry, and they shouldn't be hungry unless they're snacking all day. So if your baby's gonna snack all day and you don't mind about this, they're also not gonna typically have great naps. And that's just how that cookie crumbles. If they're not snacking and they're taking full feeds, and you know they're not hungry when they're waking up, then the settling methods that you have chosen to do, you just do that again when they wake up. And you give it a good 30, 45 minutes of that settling method to help them connect that nap. And this only has to be done a few times and they connect it. Question number 4. I'm pretty soon I'm gonna lose my ability to do my hands with the question. Why won't baby sleep? Lots of reasons. So they won't sleep because they're overtired. They won't sleep because you're trying to make them sleep too much. They won't sleep because they're hungry. They won't sleep because they're in pain. They won't sleep because they don't want to. They won't sleep because they're overstimulated. They won't sleep because the sleep environment is not conducive to sleep. They won't sleep because they never learned how to go to sleep on their own. Lots and lots of reasons. So I'm gonna link below my website, which has a lot of posts, free articles on a lot of these things. I'm gonna link that below so that you can dig into these particular ones. But there's a lot of reasons why they won't sleep. But there's only a few things that you can do that cover all of these. So if they have a good daily routine, that covers a lot of those. If you're giving them full feeds, that covers quite a bit. If you're helping them learn how to go to sleep on their own, and you're learning how to settle them in an age-appropriate way, that'll cover all those things. So just a few interventions cover almost all of those various reasons. Why does my baby wake up every 30 minutes or every hour overnight? First thing I want to rule out is something medical going on, okay? Because one of my cousins just had a newborn baby, and she was having such a hard time, and we were going back and forth, and finally one day I was like, you know what, this is so many problems for a newborn. Like, you should just give up dairy and eggs for a couple of weeks and see what happens. It's just too much. And then like 5 days later, she's like, oh, baby's face clear. Like, he's just so much more settled. And so I'm like, yeah, it was like too much, you know? Like, yeah, some newborns are hard to get to sleep. And it's hard if it's your first baby. Maybe you just think it's normal. I say that to say, I would rule out something physical, because this sounds like severe discomfort if they're waking up that much. Because even a totally zombified, exhausted baby who's just like so past the point, they won't be up every 30 minutes, you know what I mean? So I would definitely rule something else about that. Also, I would say, what is your settling method? What can happen with moms is they think the only tool they have up their tool belt is to feed a baby. Well, comfort for a hungry baby is food, but comfort for a tired baby is sleep. If baby is crying because they're tired, but you keep just like, you know, trying to give them food, that might temporarily make them feel safe by you, but it doesn't fix the problem, and it's not going to change anything, because they actually don't want to eat, they want to go to bed. So you got to figure out why. Okay, so I know that's part of the question. How do I know why? But if you stop giving them snacks, give them full feeds, then you can eliminate hunger, because you know an hour ago they had 30-minute feed, they're not hungry. Okay, and we've ruled out medical, and they're not hungry, so it must just be they're overtired and unsettled, and I need to help learn to settle them. And now, it is true, the worse they sleep during the day, they can sleep horrible at night, and it's just this big cycle of misery, because when you're exhausted, you sleep worse, and it's harder to sleep. This is true. So, the same things that I talked about before, getting your settling method down, I go into this in great detail in my Sleep Little Lamb class. Getting your settling technique down, getting a good daily routine, getting a good sleep environment goes a long way to help all of these things. It's like 1 or 2 stones with a bunch of birds. Question number 8. Should I let my overtired baby cry it out? So this is a good question, and one I want to address here is that overtired babies have a real hard time getting any sleep. So what I often suggest, and I suggest this in my class too as well, is if baby is so past the point and overtired, that I'm even gonna say take a day or two and do all of the things you feel like you shouldn't do just to help them get some sleep, so that they can actually be a little bit less tired before you do your more formal sleep training or sleep interventions. You wanna take that time. If they need to be held, hold them. If they need to be riding in a stroller to get to sleep, ride them in a stroller all day. Give them a day or two where they're actually getting this sleep and they're actually becoming less tired before you do your more formal intervention, and it will just go easier. Because, back to the original question, yes, you can let a baby who's overtired cry it out. I would never recommend it. Like, it can be done, like anything can be done, but is it gonna work? No, probably not. It's going to be way too distressing for them. Cry it out is not just, I don't know what else to do, let them cry. It is a purposeful strategy that has limits to it, done in a certain way that helps them and quickly. It's a fast technique that I typically recommend to people who are, say, going away to the hospital, going back to work. When they have a quick time for it, they're losing it. They're so mentally unwell that something's got to happen quick, right? This is when I suggest this, but I wouldn't suggest it for an overtired baby. Number 9, what position should a baby sleep in? So they need to go to bed on their back. This is what the safe sleep experts say. This is what I'm going to tell you to do. So when we were in Scotland, that's where I had my first child. And then the nurse, I never even saw a doctor. Literally never once saw a doctor. But the midwives that came to the house said when they did a big intervention over there where it was just like, and this is quite European, put the baby in the box on their back, no smoking, no nothing, blanket, that's it. that SIDS went down so drastically. I'm gonna say this, okay? A lot of moms are like, I have to put them on their tummy because they sleep better if they're on their tummy. One of the reasons that, I'm talking about to this newborn phase, one of the reasons they sleep well on their tummy, and some, yes, babies can often sleep well on their tummy, is because they're laying flat like this, they can't startle and wake themselves up because the startle just does a little bit like, but it won't do the full flail. Like if they're laying on their back and they startle, they wake themselves up. But the way to avoid this is a swaddle. You should be swaddling your newborn. Swaddle the newborn, swaddle them. So if they're swaddled, it doesn't matter. They're not gonna wake themselves up from flailing anyway. And this is a big reason why when they're on their tummy, they don't. There's no reason to break the safe sleep recommendations. There's literally no reason to break them because they work, they're safe, and baby doesn't need to be on the tummy to sleep. How do I put my newborn to sleep? So this is a good question. It isn't until about the 4-month period that the baby's sleep rhythms mature and they become more adult-like in the way that they, you know, the passive and active sleep. 4 months is when I typically suggest, or it is a great time to do a formal sleep intervention, like, okay, everybody in the family, we're gonna work on this, we're gonna get the days right, we're gonna get the nights right, we're gonna pick a settling technique, we're gonna settle them, we're gonna teach them, we're doing this, right? There's a lot of different ones, but the newborn ones are different than the others, okay? You're going to give them a little more attention, a little more time. You're gonna, you know, do a little bit of drowsy but awake before you put them in the crib. So you're gonna get them a little bit drowsy and then you can put them down in the crib. You can settle them with your hands on them in the crib. And that's the one I recommend. I want you to settle them a little bit in your arms and then in the crib and then like with your hands on them, and then gradually you do less until you can just cuddle them, put them in the crib and they go to sleep. We're not recommending cried out for a newborn. You don't need to, because if they're not overtired, but they're appropriately tired, then they'll just go to sleep without, now they won't always sleep super long periods. Newborns like to catnap, but they will get to sleep unless they're super overtired. Number 12, growth spurts. How do I know if I'm in a growth spurt? One of the easiest ways to know, this I like to eliminate because some moms are like, everything was fine and all of a sudden everything's bad. And then this is when that's actually a telling, because if baby's sleeping fine and then stop sleeping fine, it's probably not a sleep issue, because if so, they would never have been sleeping fine. If you were feeding them every 3 hours, try feeding them every 2 hours all day for a day and see if that helps. If it's a growth spurt, 1 or 2 days of that, and then they don't even want all those extra feeds, and that's it, and you know that's what it was. If you have a little bit of an inkling it could be a growth spurt, then I would put your feeds closer together. You know, so it's every 3.5 hours, every 3 hours, every 3 hours, every 2.5, something like this. See if that helps. If that helps, it was a growth spurt. They needed more milk and they needed to kind of get more stimulation to up your supply if you're nursing. So that's how I would sort of eliminate that. But I wouldn't, if baby's just never slept well and now it's 6 weeks and they're not sleeping well, it's just probably not a growth spurt. They probably just don't sleep well. Number 13, which leads into a similar question, how do I know if my baby is sick or if it's a sleep issue? So my answer is similar. If baby has never slept well and then now baby is not sleeping well, nothing has changed, they just don't sleep well, okay? If baby has been everything's been predictable, they've been sleeping well, things seem to be fine, and now all of a sudden, this is when I say there could be something else happening. This is my big indicator. Is it all of a sudden? Because if it's all of a sudden, then it could be a health issue. Now at 4 months, there's an all of a sudden sleep regression that can happen, but this is because their rhythms mature, and often if they've never learned to sleep on their own, but they've just always napped in your arms, by age 4, they wake up a little more. They need a little bit less sleep. And if they've never learned, they're just like, cool, not doing it. So this is why 4 months is a great time to have a formal sleep intervention. Again, that means deciding to get on a routine with a good settling method to help them settle and get them in the crib. I would say if they've always been sleeping well, but now they're not, could it be ears? These are the big ones. I actually have an entire post on, it's either 10 or 12 medical things that could be causing baby not to sleep, and I'm gonna link to that below because that kind of gives you the symptoms and helps you rule those out. But you know it could be something medical if you feel like they're in pain. Like, do you feel like they're frustrated or in pain? And if you have that instinct, then you're gonna have to rule it out, because the truth is, if you have the instinct that they might be in pain, you gotta follow that through to completion, or you'll never be able to do anything else because you'll always keep going back to that niggle in your mind. You know, it's like my cousin who was like, I just think his tummy hurts. And then it turned out that's what it was. Question number 14. Is a routine necessary for a baby to sleep well? Yeah, okay, yeah, it is. Now, by routine, do you mean a clock watching? No, it's not necessary to watch a clock for baby to sleep well. A routine is just a set of things you do regularly, right? If your routine is you feed baby, they fall asleep on your boob and you hold them for 2 hours and they sleep, you have a routine. This is your nap routine. And if you do it every time and baby sleeps, like this is the routine. Or if you hug, kiss, cuddle, change your sleep environment to be conducive, put them in bed, settle them in bed, kiss them and go, and they sleep, that's your sleep routine. So anything you do, and even if you think you don't have a routine, you do. Even if it's not working, it don't mean it's not a routine, right? So say you're like, baby needs to sleep, and you put them in their crib and they cry for 5 minutes and then you can't take it anymore, and then you go in and rock them and put them down. If you do this every day, this is your routine. I go in my crib, I cry because I want mommy. She makes me cry for a little while. Then I come back, then she comes back, and then I do this, and then I go to bed. Nobody's manipulating. You keep doing what works, right? So whatever you're doing is probably a routine, unless all the time you're changing everything, in which case that has to be going badly for you. And yes, you do need a routine. So yes, a routine is good. It helps you, like it's how we are. If you every day you have lunch at 12, by 11:45 you're starting to get hungry. Your body gets used to it. So routine is good. It makes it much easier. There's less resistance. There's less fighting over what protesting. It's just it is a magic bullet. Number 15. How do I know if it's a sleep cycle issue? So this is a great question. So sleep cycle issue essentially means baby can't connect their sleep cycles on their own. So this means if they need you to get them to sleep, they're probably gonna need you to keep them asleep when they transition, because they have a job to do. Mommy does X, I go to sleep. I wake up a little bit between active and passive and wait, mommy's not doing X, mommy does X, I go back to sleep. This is every 45 minutes or so during naps, and this is probably every 2 hours or so at night. That's a sleep cycle issue. It means they can't keep sleeping on their own because they need you to do whatever you did to help them. If they're having really short naps, 30, 45 minutes, this is probably a sleep cycle issue. They get to sleep, and as they're beginning to kind of come a little bit awake before they go back into the next cycle, then they're not liking what's happening. The environment's not the same. They have the job to do. They just can't get back to sleep on their own. They are protesting, they're calling for you to come. That's how you know if it's a sleep cycle. Number 16, why does baby wake up when I try to put them down in their crib? Oh yeah. This is they don't like the new environment, they like the old environment, right? They want to be in your arms, you try to put them down. I'm not saying you're doing it deceptively, but this is one of the behaviors I consider tricking, because if you want them to sleep in their crib, you don't have to trick them somewhere else and then put them in their crib sneakily, right? So this is kind of similar as they get older and they're having some separation anxiety. The key isn't to sort of get them to fall asleep and sneak out, because this isn't creating trust between you. This is actually, you're just trying to do a shortcut and hope they don't notice, instead of letting them be okay, instead of working with them and supporting them, and so that they are okay where they're gonna go to bed. Let me add this tip in here. You should put them down in their crib feet first. So if you're holding them, don't just put them on their back on the crib. Tilt them, put their feet down on the crib, and then lay them down. This will more or less prevent the reflex that feels like they're falling. So that's the first thing that you should do anyway if you get into this scenario. But second, if this always happens, you need to work on a settling technique in their crib, so that they go to bed in their crib, and then that's where they wake up. And then this is when they will transition through the cycles, because they will be like, I went to bed in the crib, I'm rolling over still in the crib, everything's fine. As opposed to, I was in mommy's living arms and now I'm in the stupid crib I hate and I want to wake up. You see what I mean? So we don't need to trick. We don't need to sneak. We can just support and comfort them in the environment in which we want them to sleep. This is why you should choose a settling technique in their environment. Number 17. We only got 20 people. Why is baby waking up for hours at night? So this is a good question, and it depends on the age, but if the baby is a newborn, they're probably day-night confused. I have a whole post on that, but they're not going to sleep 24 entire hours a day. So if you let them nap a whole bunch in the day, they're going to wake up at night. If you're letting them at nap for 3, 4, 5 hours in the day, no. Sometimes I hear from moms and they're like, they were tired, they slept for 5 hours. I'm like, well, you're gonna be tired tonight, because baby ain't gonna do it, ain't gonna sleep for 5 hours during the day and the night. Ain't happening. Wake a sleeping baby. Wake a sleeping baby. Wake them. Wake up a baby who's napped for too long during the day. So that's for the newborn. As they get older, sometimes we can expect them to, they might be getting enough daytime sleep. They don't need that much at night. So maybe they're taking a 3-hour nap. They're not gonna wanna sleep 12 hours at night, maybe. So perhaps cutting the nap, that can help. And it depends also what happens in the night when they wake up. Are they just laying happily in their crib or in their bed and they're just talking to themselves and then they go back to sleep? In that case, that's probably an issue where there's too much time in bed. And if there was a little bit less, they'd sleep through. Or whereas if they're waking up and they're crying and they're wanting to get a lot of attention, it could just be that there's become a routine where they get this attention that they want at night. And because they get it at night, they keep waking up for it at night. Does that make sense? This is not manipulative. Everybody wants what they want. And when we get what we want, however we got it, we keep doing it to keep getting what we want. This is, sometimes it's manipulation in adults, but kids are not. They're just like, oh yeah, if I wake up, mommy comes. Score! This is by adding that time together during the day. You're gonna have clear boundaries because especially if you're working, you literally just can't be up for 3 hours in the night. This is no, I know we're parents 24/7, but this is not how the world works. It's literally dark at night. This is literally when everybody sleeps, and you're not gonna be okay being up multiple hours at night. Like, it's just not gonna happen. It doesn't have to happen because they don't need to be up 3 hours at night either. That goes on to the next question, question number 18, night wakings. How do I stop these? So it depends on what it's for. So you're not gonna wean before they need to be weaned, but if they're just waking up 4 or 5, they don't need, even newborns don't need 5 night feeds. They really don't, okay? Because they're gonna have a dream feed, they might have 1 or 2 night feeds, and then like they really don't need it because newborns can go 3 hours between feeds. It depends on what they're waking for. If it's a habit, this is when you're gonna settle them back to sleep with your settling method. If they're past 6 months and they're not eating solids, then you're just gonna have to deal with whatever's happening because they're gonna be starved. So you just need, this is how it is. If you're not ready to feed them, that's fine, but they are literally not going to nap and sleep well when they're hungry. They're just not gonna do it. So they're gonna start, by 6 months, if you haven't done solids or they won't take them or you're not giving them that much or whatever it is, they will probably start waking up more than they did before because they're hungry and they're not getting enough food. So that's just an easy, this is how the cookie crumbles. This is not hard to solve. But if they're getting enough food and then you've got to figure out what it is. Is it a habit? Okay, now you got to communicate expectations. If they're hungry, you're gonna have to feed them until it's time for them, or they'll be able to be weaned. If you have 2 night feeds and they're just taking a little milk each time, you can combine them into 1 good solid milk feed and then settle for the next one. Or if they're waking up because of pain, obviously you got to soothe the pain. You got to figure out what that is. If they're waking up because maybe there's noise or maybe they're sharing a room, we need some white noise so that we're not hearing another person roll over, whatever the case may be. You got to figure out what it is first. And they can wake at night out of hunger, they can wake at night out of overtiredness. Oh, this is a big one. Babies who are really tired will wake up a lot at night. So typically most all solutions that help night issues can be more or less really solved during the day. Not all, but the great majority, because if they're not overtired and they're not worn out and they know how to get to sleep, they just will do it. The body is made to sleep at night. They want to sleep. They really want to. Number 19, what time is a good bedtime for babies and toddlers? Interestingly, bedtime itself, but from when they're 5 to when they're babies, is really not gonna be a huge difference. It really isn't, because for example, some newborns in my sleep certification, they love a 6:30 bedtime. I personally like a 7 or 7:30 bedtime, but it's all right there in there together, okay? So say a 6:30 bedtime, this is gonna be like a 6:30 wake up, okay? Anywhere in this range is okay. It's all about them not having a huge gap, okay? So you don't want baby to have woken up at 3:30 from their nap and not go to bed till 8, because this is 4.5 hours. Is it? Yes, it's 4.5 hours. This is a big gap for a little one. So it's all about the gap, right? So this way, if they have a little bitty cat nap for 15 minutes, at 4:45 to 5, they probably can go to bed at 7 or 6:45, something like this, okay? Now, every bit of sleep they get before midnight is better than the sleep they get after. That is when we go into our most deep sleep. So this is why it's not good for bedtime to just be like 9, because then that's only a little bit of deep sleep. They'll probably sleep hard till 12:30 and make your life miserable till morning. So you want them to go to bed at the 6:37 time. This is the standard. Let me just say 7. 7 is a good time. If you have no other, just aim for 7, okay? And now it can be tweaked a little back or forth, but this is pretty good, okay? So we don't want their late nap to be going till 7, because then they're up and they're like, what? Like, okay, no. So we want to wake them up in time. They have a little bit of sleep pressure built up at this time. This is a good time. And as toddlers, now, if they're still having their nap, you might move their toddler bedtime back a little bit later because they're having a nap, especially if you don't want to drop the nap. Hear me, nobody wants to drop the nap. Then you're gonna move bedtime back a little bit, okay? Because if they're taking 2-hour chunk of a nap, they ain't gonna go to bed at 6:30. So maybe you put them to bed at 8 even, and then see how that pans out, okay? Say for a year, they take a 2-hour nap, they go to bed at 8. Well, then if they drop that nap, that bedtime needs to come back up. The bedtime's gonna come back up a little because it'll be hard for them to get that long throughout the day without a nap. So that's kind of how you tweak it. We're gonna say before 6:30 is just sort of, that's too early. So my sleep certification loves a 6:30 and I love a good solid 7. Here's a big question. People often say, but my husband comes home late for work and he wants to hold the baby. This is where you just have to balance what's working and what's not. If he comes home, holds the baby, and it means bedtime's later and everybody's fine, this is excellent. If he comes home late, holds the baby, nothing's fine, baby's tired, it's just, well, you want to sacrifice baby's doing okay for him to hold her? If you do, you do. If you don't, then you don't. And then this might be a time where in the morning they spend that time together before going to work as opposed to the evening. So you just got to make it where, or maybe the first feed that they wake up, he can have that time to cuddle and love and hug. So you've just got to make that work for you. I will say this, it does often happen that that is the dream goal and it can work if you have an easy angel baby. But if you don't, then they gotta go to bed when they gotta go to bed. And you'll know, because you'll know if a baby's tired or not. You're gonna know. So last question, how do I know how many naps my little one needs? So I have an entire free cheat sheet I'll link below on the amount of naps during the day that they need. But a newborn's basically gonna nap after every feed, okay? And then at night. Then it kind of moves to 3 naps a day, or then it moves to 2. By about, I don't know, 7 months, 8 months, they're on 2 naps. And then that lasts all the way until 13 or 14, kind of between that 13 month to 18 month. By 18 months, they should be on 1 nap. But it can vary in between. Then you're weaning a little every other day they want to. Some days they want 1. That can be a bit of a hairy process. You go by how they're doing maybe every other day for a while, and then they'll end up getting to where they just wait and go to bed at 12:30 or 1 in the afternoon. By 18 months, they should be on 1 nap. But I have an entire cheat sheet that goes, and it has a recommended amount of hours too. I know this is a lot of info, and again, I have a lot of free resources as well as my baby sleep class below, and I hope that this kind of gave you at least some spark, some inspiration. Often if I talk about this, a mom will be like, oh, like something will have put 2 and 2 together and sparked it and given them a direction to go in. So of course you can always go to my website and email below with any questions. If you're feeling like maybe you need to do something but it makes you feel nervous, I really encourage you to check out my video, Is Sleep Training Dangerous? And we go into some evaluation of a major study in this, and we just kind of break this down. So I encourage you to watch it, whichever it is, I encourage you to watch that and go with God. Be blessed, mama. I'll see you soon.